to Veterans in Politics Municipal Endorsement Interviews 2019. Of course, go visit us at www.veteransinpolitics.org. Again, we want to appreciate all our candidates, and I'd always make this disclosure. We've invited all the candidates, and we're so happy that some did show up, and we're just not happy that some didn't show. So our next is our Boulder City Mayor interview, and I'm going to turn it over to him. Do your name, and I'll give you 2 minutes to open up. Talk to your bio.
My name is Harhay. This is actually my second appearance at the Veterans in Politics Endorsement interview. 2 years ago, I appeared here under much different weather circumstances. It was rain, and gray, and not a typical day here in southern Nevada. Today, the sky is blue, the birds are singing. It's a little bit chilly, but it's a wonderful venue. I'm running for Boulder City Mayor because I believe that my initiative that I started when I was elected could gain more traction in the position of mayor. And I felt that one of the major problems that Boulder City had is that it had lost the confidence of the voters in many ways. And I felt that by encouraging more transparency, more citizen involvement, and especially more listening to citizens, we can get back on track and people restore their faith in their local city government. So that's my main objective. It's not building buildings or structures or businesses or whatever. It's building trust in a local government.
All right, thank you so much. So we're going to open up to the panelists. Ms. Ortiz, you're first. Please state your name and your question.
Christina Ortiz, U.S. Army retired, Veterans in Politics, Chapter Director. So, as the rest of Southern Nevada is growing, Boulder City has a limit on when you can build, where you can build, and how you can build. How do you feel about that law, and do you think it needs to be revised to keep up with the growing city?
No, I don't believe it. The reason why people move to Boulder City is a small town character. The reason people move to Boulder City is the fact that it is an independent town. It is an independent city. It has its own police force, its own fire department, its own newspaper, and more importantly, has a fierce sense of community. The controlled growth ordinance, which was passed 40 years ago, has limited the growth of our town to approximately 16,000 people today. And the feeling is that there should be some growth. And under our growth ordinance, we're permitted to have 120 new homes per year in Boulder City. That has not been reached until recently. We have got to the issuance of 30 permits per contractor, and 4 contractors will be permitted. But the city has retained the character of being a small town, a cohesive town. And although the advantage of large population is, larger tax base and so forth, we've decided to take a different path. And our path was to conserve what we have and what we want to continue to have in the future. So I believe that the growth ordinance is a good one. It's preserved Boulder City as a historic treasure. People like Boulder City, and the very things of growth would be negate some of the things that we like the best in our town.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Robert Medoff. I'm a retired criminal court psychologist. So in your opening statement, you indicated that the voters have lost trust with the government, with the local officials. Is that a correct statement?
I'm sorry, good.
That the voters have lost the trust of...
Well, I think that could be the case for many places in America where the citizens have lost faith in their government. And obviously it's not an easy question to resolve or to fix, but is generally applicable to transparent, open, and listening.
Right.
Bring your microphone closer. The microphone closer. Okay.
Specifically, if you were elected, how would you bring that trust back to with the residents?
Well, there's a couple of things that I've thought of. One of the things that we set a policy citywide. One thing that I initiated upon being elected is I encouraged each councilman to hold a town hall in an area that they felt that some expertise or interest in. I held the first one, which was on the utilities, because our utility rates have gone very high in a very short period of time. Out of that, we formed an ad hoc utility commission, and in the future we're going to have a formal citizens advisory committee for utilities, and not only water, electricity, but water as well. Also, what I would encourage is pass a policy that once a constituent had sent an email or communication to a councilman or to the mayor or anyone in the public level, at the director level, that they have 48 to 72 hours to respond, and they should respond within 10 days. Again, what I initiated was a weekly coffee with a councilman session where it's open to anybody who wants to come, gab and gripe and whatever Boulder City issue you want to talk about, we talk about. I find these very instructive to me, to hear what people want. And again, a thing that I believe that we're the weakest on over the years is we didn't listen. We don't listen well. We take surveys and pseudo town halls, but you never get to, in a conversation one-to-one with people.
Good morning, thank you for being here. John Moore, former Nevada Assemblyman. And now that the bypass has been open for a little bit of time, how has that affected Boulder City local businesses, and what do you have a plan to help those businesses that possibly have suffered because of that?
It's interesting you should ask that question. That's an area of contention. What's interesting is that the Chamber of Commerce composed a study before the bypass was open. And on the day that it was to be presented to City Council, it was withdrawn. It was instructed to the Chamber of Commerce that they were not to introduce that plan. I cannot answer why that was done. That was before my time. However, many of the businesses, some businesses have been affected. The businesses that have relied solely upon tourists have been negatively impacted. A prime example is the Burger King that's located. Now, it's had other problems since it's open because it has very poor access. People can't just drive in like every other Burger King in America. It's got its own driveway, not in Boulder City. That establishment relied heavily on tourists, and the reputation for service and product, let's say, did not meet the highest standards. And so there's not a lot of repeat business from the local people in that area. What's happened is that the downtown area, the historic area, has increased in its vibrancy and livelihood. And the merchants along the way, especially some of the restaurants, they have seen a difference in terms of the timing of the clientele visiting them, but really not a major impact in terms of the impact on their business. Another business that went out of business was, again, a tourist-related enterprise, the alpaca store. And that store, people like to say the bypass killed it. Well, it did not. In that case, the owner of that store, who already had a store in Las Vegas, felt in anticipation of the bypass he was going to get a tourist rate. And so he closed his store actually before the bypass was in place. The one thing we don't miss in Boulder City, because we had no positive impact, is the semi-trailer traffic, which was a real positive for us. I know many people in Las Vegas, Anderson, that love to come up to Boulder City, but not to be able to deal with that traffic with the semis. It's a highly congested area. And that's not the case anymore. So uneven, we're surviving, and the vibrant businesses, the businesses that deserve to exist, are existing well. New businesses are coming in to replace some of those other businesses.
Lena Ocasio, quick question regarding the public schools in Boulder City. Boulder City is still part of the Clark County School District, and we're not ranked very high. How would you, what would you implement to improve the schools, particularly in Boulder City?
Well, this is an interesting question because I'm not running for school trustee. And I am interested in providing the best possible environment for our students in our high school, our junior highs, and our elementary schools. And they have consistently proven above the norm of Southern Nevada in terms of the performance. We've established quite a good reputation in terms of the swim team now having a national champion coming out of Boulder City. The schools, not to say that schools can't be improved, but one of the reasons why people move to Boulder City is the schools. And you don't mess with something that's working. Now, if I was a school trustee or running for a school trustee, I'd have a slate of things that I have before me. But that's the job of the school trustee. It's not the job of the mayor or a councilman. They have to run and keep the environment for those schools. They have to keep them safe. They have to have access. They have to maintain patrols for the speed limits within the school zones. Those are all things in terms of the environment for learning and so forth to take place at the school.
Frank Switzer, family court activist. So since you're talking about the safety of schools and patrolling the areas, would you be for or against having armed personnel protecting those kids?
Well, I grew up in the last century, and the even thought of having a teacher armed makes me shudder. I would have to say I would be against it, as long as our safety forces can provide the services to the schools to keep them safe. But I'm opposed to having armed. In fact, I've gone all the way through 2 graduate schools and as well as high school and so forth, without ever seeing a armed teacher. I've seen armed policemen within the school, which I think is totally appropriate. Because today it's a different time than it was in 1948. And Miss McNerney, I think, going back to my kindergarten teacher, I just can't see her strapping on a 45 in the classroom than going to the ABCs.
Just to clarify, I wasn't saying armed teachers, just armed trained person.
Yeah. And I have no problem with the police. And when I taught back in Ohio, and the high school that I taught, there were police officers who, their principal job at that time, because it was much before the current wave of violence, was to maintain order in the parking lot. And but they were armed, and when unruly scuffling took place that was beyond the counselor's ability to control, they were there to take it down, remove the students, and restore order.
My question got answered.
Again, this will conclude. Before we conclude, we want to give you another minute to tell the voters of Boulder City why they want to vote for you for mayor.
The best predictor of how someone will perform is how they have performed in the past. I came on board as a novice politician, never ran for office before. I was told it was a fool's errand. I didn't know what I was doing this. I decided then not to accept campaign funds from anybody, that I funded myself. And I turned out getting the majority of the votes, the most votes, in fact. And I did that because I camped out in front of the great meeting. I was open and talked to people. And actually, I enjoyed the job. I love my job. It's the best job I've ever had. And I've had some jobs I created myself. But it's a very rewarding experience. If you like people, and you like to be in government, and you like to represent the folks, and you like to listen to them, I'm your guy. And refuse to say anything negative. I never have about any of my opponents. But I feel the more exposure you have to the public, the better chances you have for election. Now, this is going to be a very tough race for me. I'm running against an incumbent. I'm running against a fellow councilman who also ran at the same time I did, but he didn't get as many votes as I did. So I don't know what the result will be, but I know one thing. At the end of the day, at the end of the voting, I'll be happy with my commitment. I'll be happy with my expenditure. And I'll be happy to go back to being Boulder City Council, because it is a high honor.
Again, Councilman, thank you for being here. That concludes our Veterans in Politics Municipal Endorsement interviews, and this is for the Boulder City Mayor. Again, we want to thank our sponsors, Fire Rock Steakhouse Bar and Gaming, Real Water, Michael Broadway Real Estate. Again, we thank you for being here, and how about a round of applause for our wonderful candidates.